Get my mic up. Check, check. Ideally a little closer if I can. We'll see how this goes. Stay. I really like this boom arm, but it does not have a way to manually tighten it. So you kind of just have to get it at just the right angle, though I probably need to move over towards it anyway. So if I can get it to... Hey, that's not bad. Okay. Now, will it let me edit the name? Alrighty. Fixing up rebuilding. Rebuild a Proto rail. Talking paintball. And testing TOS. Save. And hitting recording on my computer. So this is the first paintball post live stream. Hopefully first of many in some respects. Now receiving a video to maintain smooth streaming as a... I mean, I'm getting 2,000 kilobit a second, 3,000. I don't know what YouTube's talking about. All right. Oh, okay. I can open widget and see. I don't know. Okay, so let's get this over here. So, doing a few things today. One is I have some family and friends I'm trying to get into paintball, so I have been combing the internet for some deals. And one of them is this guy. Now, I've heard some issues with YouTube terms of service where people have had their streams taken down for having firearms, big quotey fingers, on screen. So I need to make sure before I get too deep into the paintballpost.com that I can live stream these. And I've seen better luck with people having them rather than on the main image. So that's why I'm going to have this guy down here on the multicam view. But I do want to get in to something because I've got an article coming up on this on thepaintballpost.com. Highly recommended, not just because I write everything on it, but because I think it's good. Okay, so I am cheap. So not only did I get this paintball gun for cheap, I'm rebuilding it for cheap too. A lot of O-ring kits and rebuild kits for paintball guns are way more expensive than they should be, in my opinion. Sometimes that's not the case, but I have seen online where they're asking like $10 for 10 O-rings, and you shouldn't do that. So, if you find your manual, and the gun I have in question today, is a Proto rail. Can I get the rail and frame? There it is. Rail. Although I can always move the phone. Yeah, so this is a Proto rail. So I can bring up the manual here. And I don't mind that they color-coded their O-rings, but I don't care. So I've moved away from that. It does make it... So here's something I do really like about this. Because it's color-coded, pending you're not colorblind, because that would make this kind of suck, you can see here which colors go in which spot, as well as which numbers. So And some of it gets a little bit confusing. So if you've ever looked into O-rings, O-rings are a pain in the butt. This Buna 70 or N70, which nitrile rubber. It's a fairly standard. Oh, I can use fairly standard thing when it comes to this stuff. So I don't normally recommend an O-ring kit like this, if my camera will focus. But I ordered this because it was 20 bucks Canadian, has a few hundred of the ones that I actually need in this top row, and then a whole bunch of ones that I don't, that I'm going to use for spacers for different things, and then probably give to like a plumber for the rest of it. But yeah, so it's got a whole bunch of O-rings in the size I do need, and then it did come with, or well, rather it was supposed to come with, some O-ring picks, which just, they're not necessary, but like I've got a straight pick here. But let's see my hand. Focus on my hand. Yeah, there we go. So those are handy. Curved here. Although it's really wanting to show you my hand, so I'll bring my, yeah, there we go. So these picks are really nice for just making it a bit easier. So I was like, you know what, it has a few that I need, and then came with the picks. Or it's supposed to. It came in a opened bag that there was a sticker on the open bag that says, do not separate, this is a pack. So I contacted Amazon, and there is no Amazon drop-off location within my town, so they refunded me the whole thing, so I got these for free. Cool. But if you're not super lucky, to be unlucky, I guess, because that's how I ended up with those for free, you can go on the internet and you can find O-rings individually. If you're in the States, you can usually get, I think it's Captain O-ring is a popular one. There used to be O-ring Monkey. I don't know if there is anymore. In Canada, it's not loading because my internet's terrible. I will fix this later. I used O Canada Supply or something like that. Where's my box here? Yeah. OH. And then I just went through and I ordered the specific sizes that I needed and just ordered them in bags of 20. So that's how I filled in my kit, is I looked through the different O-ring kits and stuff I had for other markers, and then I found the O-rings that I needed for my particular guns. So highly recommend doing that if you're building out your own kit and stuff. But I have seen the Captain O-ring ones are pretty good, but this is the downside of these dye ones. Because they color coordinate their O-rings, and at the time they did this, nobody else did. And some, do I have... Here's my Axe one. Hey, here's my old Vanquish one that I'm going to recycle a bunch of O-rings out of for other stuff. These are color coordinated and color coded, but they do not line up with the dye stuff. So don't expect to be able to just go and, oh, I'm just going to get a O-ring kit from X company and the orange is orange, right? My day job, I own a music store and I sell guitar picks a lot. The same thing happens there, where some companies have color coordinated and they match. So you can go in and I want I think it's a 73. That's the yellow in Dunlop. Other companies, that might be a completely different size. So don't rely on the color codedness of it, but it is nice for, like, hey, I can just look at this and see where everything's supposed to go. So we're going to rip everything out of this. This marker here, by here, I mean, you can't see it right now. Let me change my scenes. I'm actually going to steal something. One of my favorite streamers, Day9, he has his number pads set up. so that it'll switch between scenes. I'm going to do that on this computer one of these days. I'm not going to bother with something like a Stream Deck, because why would I for the little bit I do? This mat is also going to be, so I've got a upcoming article. I'm going to do a video on it as well, talking about paintball stuff that you don't need to bother buying at the paintball store, right? The number one thing you should buy at the paintball store is a mask, because you always want to make sure that... is this for the new... am I going paintball on tomorrow? Probably not tomorrow. I'm working tomorrow. I know they're open Sunday, but it's woods ball only, so I got to decide. But no, this isn't for that blue one that I got last year. I'm guessing that's my nephew there. Because he was here the day I got my fancy MacDev Prime XTS, my first one. I have a second one now. I've got one in red because, yeah, that is Jacob. Okay. Yeah, my wife is probably going to steal my blue one because not only is it blue, but it's also incredibly comfortable, and they're great guns. So, but no, I am rebuilding this Proto Matrix rail. Adjusting a bit here. Yeah, so I got this off of a local sale. Unfortunately, you cannot get these. Well, unfortunately, you can't buy and sell paintball markers on Facebook Marketplace because just like these YouTube terms of services that I'm testing out today, they think that this is a gun, even though it's not. I got this off of a local buy-sell for $80 Canadian, which, if you know the Proto Rail, that's pretty good. Now, these are older guns. This is 2011, I believe. And the reason it was so cheap is it was leaking. Now, I am operating under a bit of an assumption. They said it was leaking up here. If it's leaking in here, that's a problem. This is where the solenoid is housed. So if it leaks in there, that's a bit of a big deal. Oh, I need to be further this way if I want to stay in camera. Interesting. I'm mirrored in my thing. Yeah, so this, if it's leaking from the solenoid, it was still a good deal. Because $80 Canadian for you Americans out there, that's like $60. And then a solenoid is like $40 American. So by the time I'm done, I will have less than $100 put into this. And if you haven't shot one of these rails before, they're pretty darn good. Now, I have high hopes for it being in pretty good shape because this, if it'll focus on my hand. Nope. Oh, it's trying to focus on my drink. Oh, there's my camera. That's why. The eye pipe for this is in near perfect condition. So either somebody replaced this or it hasn't been shot a whole lot. Now, given the condition of the back cap, I suspect it has been at least taken apart quite a few times. But here's the thing. These are supposed to come apart real easy. Ugh. Oh, have a good night there, Jacob. Thanks for stopping by. Ugh. And yeah, we're going to get you out paintballing a lot this year. Don't worry at all. But yeah, in terms of this thing here, this is supposed to be easy. You're supposed to be able to flick it and the bolt should move forward. That is not happening on this. So when I got this, there was not any grease on anywhere on it. So I have a suspicion the guy who got the thing opened it up, noticed that it was all greasy and weird, and then wiped all the grease off. And that's probably why it was leaking for him. I'm just going to move myself over here a little bit so I stay in frame. A bit better. And yeah, as you can hear, probably there. Ugh, yeah. Should not take that much force. The bolt sail O-ring, which is the most important one, this orange one here, that looks to be in pretty good shape, but the one inside of the can, which is the exact same size, is toast. That one is in real bad shape. Now, I am going to operate under a second assumption that the regulator is fine, because as you can see here, this is something I heavily disagree with Die on / Proto. This takes snap ring pliers to take apart. Don't like that. Don't like that at all. That is bad. Now, thankfully, these are pretty robust. I might replace the top O-ring there, but yeah, if it was leaking from the regulator, it would purge, and isn't, as far as I know. Now, unfortunately as well, as my nephew mentioned there, my paintball field is opening this weekend, and that is awesome. But it means I am kind of hitting like the most amount of time possible between the last time I played and the first time that the field's open. So I'm out of air on everything. So this rebuild is a bit of a put it together, and then I get to find out in a couple weeks if it works, because that's just where we're at. Okay, so now for anybody not familiar with the rail, these are essentially a souped up ion. They work very, very similar. Now, can I get these out on my own? These are going to be a pain. So I got to use my new toys. Haha. I'm going to use this guy here. Let me see here. If I bring this in, yeah, so these are essentially a souped up ion. The Ion was one of the biggest guns probably ever in a lot of respects. Maybe, I mean, beaten obviously by the Tippett 98. I need to be further on this side. No. Do that. Maybe we'll shrink this down a little bit more. So probably surpassed only by the Tippett 98 in terms of the Ion's popularity. It doesn't deserve all the praise that it got. It had lots of problems. The big one being no bolt out the back. So you saw that I took this thing out with a simple Allen key. You can't do that on the original Ion, which was really too bad. Because overall, that bolt design, you see it used here. It's similar, but a little bit different on this guy. Overall, this is incredibly similar. Yeah, okay, this back one can be replaced. So I'm just replacing all of them. Normally, if I had this gun for a while and I learned where issues pop up, I would just replace a few O-rings. But when it's a case of the whole thing is giving, like, it's just leaking everywhere, then I'm just going to replace the whole lot. Especially because, like I said, like the orange from the orange O-ring in the can was on the bolt when I pulled it out. And, like, that's a bad sign if you're getting, like, orange residue on your bolt from your colored O-ring. But anyway, Ion overall was actually a really, really good shooting gun. It just was a pain to take apart. And it solved something that basically everybody has been chasing since, and this does essentially the same thing, is making an electro-pneumatic gun with a inexpensive solenoid. So like I said out the gate with this guy, that's why you want these. That was so much easier to get out than like trying to get that out with your fingers. Good luck to you. Now, if we inspect this O-ring, I can already feel it being a bit gritty. Oh, and you can see it on my hands. Like this orange, that's it. It's just crumbling apart. Good. I have a piece of paper towel. Ugh, because I need it for my hands. Gross. Yeah, so like that O-ring is just toast, and I gotta get in there and clean that. That groove is disgusting. But yeah, the idea, like, an inexpensive paintball gun is doable. But the thing about an inexpensive paintball gun is you got to find a way to do it with a solenoid that is going to last, because you don't want to tick your player base off. But a solenoid that isn't expensive. You see this in like the Axe and the Mini. The solenoids that are in those are quite inexpensive. And same thing on these. I'm going to see, do they have a picture of a solenoid on here? The problem is, oh yeah, they don't want you actually taking some of this stuff apart. So, so you see here, this is the solenoid assembly in this. So rather than it being like manifold mounted with internal air channels and stuff, they opted for essentially identical to a ion solenoid, to the point where I've got a I can't remember its name right now. Smart Parts. It's on Envy. It's something like that. Vibe. That's what it was. And it has a leak right now, and I looked into it, and if I need a solenoid for it, I can actually modify a Proto / die solenoid to fit it. Now getting back to this gun, is an unbalanced spool, which is great. Unbalanced is perfectly fine, though at the time that this thing came out, everybody wanted balanced. We've kind of moved past that ever since there was a bunch of Planet Eclipse guns that were unbalanced spools, like starting from the Geo, but the G-Tech and the CS 1, 2, 3, and eventually Pro once that comes out. At least it's rumored. Yeah, all of those are unbalanced. And this one's a pretty clever implementation of it, right? So you got your cam back here, and just like most of the die guns, and I've got a few on my wall behind me, air comes in through the back here, right? So that's why these are separated. And there's actually holes back here. This is a little inefficient, but it probably worked around some patents. But that then fills this chamber in here. So like all the space between this O-ring and this O-ring gets filled from this internal channel here when the bolt is at rest. When the bolt's at rest, it allows air through that into the front. When the bolt moves forward, all of a sudden that inner channel is blocked off, because it'll be surrounded by these two tail O-rings, which means whatever's in the chamber is whatever's in the chamber. That is the key to this gun working as good as it does. The rail is kind of famous for a really, really soft shot because it's really, really slow. What that means is when the bolt fires, it's moving real slow, fires, moves back really slowly, airs back up, moves forward, fires, moves back really slow. Like I think the only gun I know of that has a slower dwell time than it was the Empire Vanquish. And even then, I think this one might have it beat in terms of just pure length. Like it's really really slow. My Proto Matrix rail behind me was quite a bit faster, and that was the predecessor to this, and it was still using a much better die solenoid, but did have some of the like plastic. We swear it's not plastic parts. The GRN as the rail does, and then the behind me, what was that one called? The reflex rail was all aluminum and had the better solenoid in it, so it was kind of there in between the proto stuff and getting into the proper die stuff, because unfortunately they discontinued the matrix rail, or sorry, the just straight up matrix for the proto line after the PM8, because the PM8 in a lot of ways is actually better than a lot of the die guns that came out at the time. We'll get to that in another video, but I do have an article on it on the PB Post. So yeah, that's essentially how this works. So that moves forward, and now there is a internal O-ring inside of here. As this bolt is moving forward, you can even hear it. That release. That is the bolt moving forward enough to allow this O-ring to be no longer making a seal. And then on the back of this here, air vents through there. It can't vent around the bolt because the outer O-ring here. And that sends air out the front to propel the ball. So clever design, easy way to get around some of the downsides to this type of bolt system. The way the Ion did it was very similar, but it cut off the airflow in a different way. Some of the dangerous power unbalanced spools just didn't even bother. They just will let air just go down the barrel the whole time. Yeah. Now this one's actually in pretty good shape, although I just stabbed it with this thing. I might use this to replace the front O-ring. Well, no, that's feeling really gushy. Over time, O-rings just wear out. The one on the very front barely matters. That's just preventing... the front one prevents a bit of blowback, so it is useful. But the big thing is this is your squeegee for the eye pipe that I showed earlier. Not a big fan of the eye pipes. I'm glad they're dying, but I hear the latest ones are pretty good. Just checking that channel that was in. It looks pretty clean, although I am seeing a little bit of dirt. One of these little crevices here that I can get to while I'm here. Like I said, the previous owner did... Well, the previous owner I picked this up from, he got it and then aired it up, and it was not working. Like I said, I have a suspicion that he missed a step in there where he took all of the grease off of everything, because, you know, looking at my fingers, I've been handling this thing a bunch, and yeah, better on this camera maybe. Yeah, like I had to wipe the orange off of my thumb from the orange O-ring that was falling apart, but other than that, now these outer O-rings, if you're new to paintball guns, which you might be if you're looking up proto rail stuff, these are non-dynamic. Now, dynamic in this case doesn't just mean they're O-rings that move. That would only be, like, this is the only moving part. And it's a fairly light part, thankfully. The heavier your bolt, the more you can kind of feel it, I find. That's a little bit subjective. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into whether or not a gun is like kick or you can feel the mechanical movements inside. But the weight of the bolt definitely matters. And this is really light compared to some. But because it moves so slow, it doesn't really matter because it's moving back and forth at such a slow speed. But anyway, like I said, I highly suspect that this guy just took it apart and noticed that it was greasy, and then just thought that was actually a problem. I may have to go grab. I've got a Q-tip in the other room that I may have to shove in here. Yeah, there's a bunch of gunk in this where that other O-ring used to be. So that's probably the culprit. But yeah, he got this thing and it was leaking and stuff. Oh, that's what I was talking about. Dynamic O-rings. So yeah, if you're new to paintball, a dynamic O-ring is an O-ring that sees motion, not an O-ring that moves. So in this case, there's actually not too many. There's that guy there. The one on the back, I'm pretty sure it's just a bumper. I don't think that's actually sealing anything. Then we have this back seal one that we already took out. We've got the front seal one that we took out there, and then these two here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's actually not a lot for a spool valve. Famously, spool valves have more O-rings than a poppet valve. This is kind of the beginning of the end of that. Once we kind of figured out, oh, we don't have to make these overly complicated. Cool. That said, those are just the dynamic O-rings. The rest of these still are needed for a seal. And normally, these ones, like you can just leave them. The reason I'm taking them off is there's a good chance they've been on here for a decade because this rail design came out in 2011. And I have a suspicion that the guy who had this before me left these as well. Because, again, you don't really have to take these off for ages. They're just a seal. So as long as they don't get pinched and as long as you don't get anything on them, all they're doing is sitting stationary. You're probably fine. But if they've been sitting there this long, no grease on them and stuff, and some of the other rings are just falling apart, I'm not going to trust that, and I'm just going to replace them all. So that's all of them off. Now I just need to clean out that can. I'm going to go grab a Q-tip. Okay. So these are your best friend when it comes to cleaning stuff like this. Because you gotta get into those nooks and crannies. And I already went through it with the pick. So, oof. That's not supposed to happen. That's the downside of these colored O-rings, is sometimes I have found they do not last as long as the just the pure black ones. Now, thankfully, this is like behind the seal, but it's still not good to have that in there. But that explains a lot. So I'm also going to get in behind there. It's a little hard to show this all on camera and in my current setup. Eventually, I want to put this camera that's here to my left. I want to put that and then mount it above me, so this will be a top-down view. But I just didn't have the hardware to do that today. Let's see, though. But yeah, so already much better. Still not perfect. Yeah, so one of the things when it comes to guns like this one, like I said, the solenoid on these in particular, not the best. Not the most robust. They are known for going. But that is where the Rise and then Rise Maxed and now the CZR come into play. They upgraded the solenoid. The difference between this and the CZR is I-pipe compatibility. This uses the older one. ASA solenoid and feed neck. Internally, I'm fairly certain. I think they did fix this problem where this can was separating from this, but essentially they operate the exact same way, which is good. This is a great bolt system. If you ever go and you look up the original re-release of, or re-release, because it was technically the third complete redesign of the Shocker, because the original Shocker was the old 4x4, or the Shocker Sport, or whatever you want to call it, where they bought the rights to kind of make it. Then they made the Shocker SFT. Then they made the Shocker NXT, which then those evolved into the Lux. The Ion evolved, ironically, into the Shocker. So if you go and you look up the Shocker RSX, I think it was, and the Shocker XTS, both of those basically are using the exact same bolt design as this. Just, again, the way they chamber everything off is done a little bit differently, I'm pretty sure. You can, if you go on ZDS, is it ZDS? I should know this. I've been on there a bunch this week because I've been researching for some articles. Yeah, ZDS PB. They've got the marker animations that show all the stuff I'm talking about. So let us actually start fixing this thing. So, as mentioned, one of the advantages of this color coordination is being able to find everything on here. Nice and easy. The downside is the ones that I bought aren't. So, let's start with some 20s. Do I have 20s in this pack? Don't. Do I have 20s in this pack? I do. Oh, and they're green in this one too. Look at that. They're going to line up. That's handy. So, waste not, want not. I don't own my Vanquish anymore, but I've got an O-ring kit for it, so I'm going to use it, darn it. Although my friend does own my old Vanquish, so eventually I might give him some of these if he ever needs spares. But, yeah, so when it comes to putting these on, again, if you're watching this video because you happen to own a rail, this isn't really like a how-to guide. I'm just more fixing this while having a beer and chatting about paintball. But, yeah, you can slap some, like when you're putting the O-rings on, you don't have to be as, or you don't have to be careful at all, as long as they don't get caught or cut on anything. So, I usually do the close ones first so that the other ones can slide over top rather than trying to force the far. And on a bit like this, technically it might be easier to go over the back cap first. But because it's threaded, I got rid of it. I kind of regret it, but also don't, because it's how I bought my XTS, at least my first one. The second one I bought with worked for money. I bought a really nice older Shocker out of a gear bag deal that I sold, and yeah, that one, the oh man, my train of thought just derailed there. It has been a long day. Yeah, I don't know what I was getting at with that Shocker. I'll remember later when I'm watching this back to see if I want to pull anything from this. I also recently picked up, I've got a few Planet Eclipse Ethas. Great feeling guns. I'm actually very impressed at those. Both for what I paid and just for what they are, what they're doing. But those ones need a little more TLC than this, so I've got parts on order. And those, some of their O-rings are legit jelly. I had that happen on, I've got a La Soya ProMaster behind me, its seals, after sitting for a few years, just turn into mush. So, yeah. Well, I mean, the good news is stream is still going. Oh man, I hate getting these into these. I'll start from the front here. So getting these O-rings inside of these crevices is always a big pain in the butt. But once you get them started, it's usually pretty easy, right? You get it started, and then you just kind of work it in. Yeah. I think I kind of remember what I was going to talk about with the shocker. With shockers, they're to a point where you actually have to, if you want them to run really well, axes can be like this too. You should actually size their O-rings. That's how you get your most, like the most performance out of them, which I think is dumb. I don't want that. I don't want my tolerances to be so pristine and exact that you have to make sure that the rubber on your O-rings is exact. No, screw that. I just want to. I like guns that shoot when I pull the trigger. Okay, so this was another regular orange, so I got to replace it with one of these black guys here. Oh, maybe not. Why is it saying that that should be a 17 if it doesn't fit? I wonder. I wonder if that's actually supposed to be the 15. I think they have these backwards on this guide. That's really annoying. Fix that die. Because, yeah, that fits perfect. So that is supposed to be a 17. And then I need a 15. To be the bumper there. I probably could have got away with just leaving the old one because it is a bumper. Yeah, that fits proper. Cool. Now, bolt stem. These ones I had to order because I don't think I had very many. These are 09s. None in this pack. So eventually I'm going to take all of these packs that I have. Yeah, this was the annoying thing. So this guy had a whole bunch of... Oh, there they are. 06, 08, 010. So I have to order a bunch. Yeah, I'm going to consolidate them together eventually here. There's my 07s, because I've got a different gun that needs those. 09s. And again, those probably could have been fine, as they were. But I'm not taking any chances. If you're going to do a full rebuild, just do a full rebuild. Yeah, I still don't know what I was talking about with that shocker. But life goes on. I'll remember someday. Something about the jerk store. I don't know. So, pop those on. Again, I don't like this angle because my hand always ends up in the way. So, I'm glad I did a test stream on this before I did anything too consequential. Above view is very doable. I should be able to do it without it getting in the way of my camera here. If I put, yeah, like right about there. Thankfully, because it's, I'm using my phone. It is burning slightly more power than it's getting from my computer. That's the other thing I wanted to test, is like if it would burn itself out. Because the problem is, it is taking power and taking battery power at the same time, which isn't ideal. What's this bumper O-ring? That's a 14. Do I have a bunch of 14s? And then I'll just use a new one instead of recycling the old ones, because I don't really care. Oh, I've got a few. I'll just use a new one. Because again, that one, even though technically it's a dynamic O-ring, is just there to squeegee. And I've actually used a smaller one recently in my other dye guns because I've been testing out some 3D printed eye pipes. So now I just need this guy in here, which I believe... Oh god, die, what are you doing to me? So they labeled all the O-rings on the bolt, although they got these backwards as far as I can tell, because the 2 they said was back here, and the 3, yeah, I don't like that. Is it in the exploded view? It is that guy. It's not labeled. So this is the downside. Now it was, thankfully. I could see it was one of those blue ones, which tells me it is most likely a 14. But that's really annoying. They gotta put that... I mean, maybe it's somewhere in here. But... I don't know if they just aren't expecting people to rebuild these very much. Alright, this is gonna suck. So let's get it flat. Trying to get it into the groove. Because I get it in on one part, and you have to get it into the groove and get it to stay there. I'm gonna have to pinky. And then force the rest in. I can't do it on camera because it's... I need a closer inspection here. Oh, is it going to make me do this from behind with my... I'm going to jab myself with this thing. I just know it. Already almost did. But I'm using actually the back of it. That helped a lot, actually. Okay. It's in! Haha! So... yeah, that's really annoying. Die/Proto. Hopefully, I'm using the original rail manual. I wonder if they fixed that in the newer one. But now we're fully rebuilt on all of these. I need grease. Do I have to my smaller one? Wow, I didn't. Unless I took it out somewhere. Oh, you know, it might be out. That works. So, where's my... here. This is Super Lube synthetic grease. This is what I use for all of my guns now. It lasts a long time. I've had this jar for years. And the only reason there's a big glob missing out of the top, you can kind of see, like... it's like I took a spoon to it, is because I filled up other containers with it to make sure that I had grease for other stuff, other guns and whatnot, and on the field, because I do not like bringing this giant jar with me when I go to the paintball field. Now, one of the things when it comes to these, you need grease everywhere that there is an O-ring, even if they're stationary, because it does help with sealing. But that's all you need. You don't need it globbed on, right? Now, if you're having a leak issue and you're at the middle of a tournament and you gotta like focus and you just gotta glob the crap out of it to make it work, because it does help with the seal. I mean, do it. But one of the problems that people have with spool valves is, rightfully speaking, sometimes it seems like they are inaccurate because people go and they put so much grease on everything that you shoot it down the barrel. We don't want that. And it's not actually helping, right? The whole point of the grease isn't, in this case, to help with your seals. It does help. But the main purpose of it is to let the thing move freely, right? Now, I want to make sure I don't get too much on the bumper, but it can be greased because it's not really coming in contact with anything. But yeah, this sail O-ring here, this is your main one. This is the one that always gets problems. And then you can, anywhere that it's coming in contact with stuff, feel free to have a little bit. There's nothing that comes in contact with that stem. I don't know why I added any there. I think it was just because my fingers are heading back. I wouldn't bother greasing this front part here because I'm going to be greasing the O-ring that it's going to slide on. And don't grease this front O-ring because, again, that's supposed to squeegee out your breech. You can have like a tiny bit on there if you have any issues there, but oh, no, that part's done already. The thing about that one is that it is squeegeeing out your breech. And we just talked about you don't want to be spitting grease into your we don't want to be spitting grease into your system, or sorry, barrel. And you're just going to cover your breech in it, which is then going to get your paint covered. And then that's going to cause other problems. So a little bit of grease on these outside O-rings, like I said, it can help with the seal. It shouldn't be mandatory. Some bob long guns, especially the older ones, or I was talking about how like, oh, I don't want my tolerances to be so exact as to needing needing to make sure that all of my O-rings are sized. Yeah, so this is the problem, is that this lid doesn't really stay anymore. But yeah, this stuff, you can get this giant container. This is 400 grams. I have no idea how many ounces this is, but this was the price of about 1 ounce of paintball lube. So now, if I did everything right, which I believe I did because I've rebuilt many rail bolt systems. Actually, so to preserve this front O-ring, I shouldn't have put this on yet. Of course, now my hands are all greasy. Come on. It's this fresh O-ring, and it's just a little too stiff. Let's... Thankfully, like I said, this one's not really needing to be an airtight seal, so if I poke it wrong, this isn't the end of the world. But I want that off. Oh, shoot. I want it off. I didn't want a hole through it. Well, that one's... I'll put the new one on in a second. So this has to go through the can front end. This has always been one of the annoying things about these, is if you do that, it's already a little hard as is. If I do that with the front O-ring on, it just won't go. That might need a little more grease. After I just explained how you don't need a lot of it. That is a very tight seal. Just feeling it out for if there's any flaws in there that might cause that much tension. But that's not too bad. Now I can put this front one on because yeah, it will. You increase your risk of damaging that front O-ring if you, or not front the O-ring that's in the front of the can, if you cram this thing through with that extra bit of girth on it. That goes in there. Okay, well, like I said, I won't know if this has been successful until I take it to the field, but that's a few things. Like I said, this is a original Proto rail. I do like these, so if you're watching this and you're like, I think those are related to the CZR, do you recommend the CZR? Generally, yes, because I recommend the rail, if you can find it for cheap enough. The CZR is basically an upgraded version of the rail. Okay. I will wash my hands momentarily, but get the majority of that off. Now, the other thing I like about the Super Lube, it is rated for incidental food contact. It's not like good for you. You don't want to eat it. But if it gets on your hands and stuff, it's not all that end of the worldy. Yeah, so that is essentially how I would rebuild one of these, is just go through. If you haven't used them in a long while, like that's not a whole lot of O-rings. A lot of those were the exterior ones. If your exterior O-rings, like mine, are ancient, replace them. But unless you're having weird leaks from that spot, these usually last forever. The ones that don't were essentially, let me get that on. These ones here, right? We had our back bumper, bolt sail, slash internal can. Oh, did I not? There's the other one. Oh, it was a different color. Look at that. Interesting. But yeah, so we had the back bumper, the internal sail, and the back bumper, internal can, internal stem section, like the rear section. We have the two bolt stem, and yeah, then our bolt sail proper. That's not a whole lot, right? Those are your dynamic O-rings right there. Is a very small amount. And those are the majority of the ones that are going to wear out. And they should last you case after case after case if you are lubing your gun more often than this guy was, where he didn't. That's why one of these was a goopy mess. I did remember. I got both of those internal ones, right? I remember doing two. Yeah, I remember doing two. All right. Well, I consider this a successful first stream, and then I got to test out my camera angles. I'm not sold on them, so I am going to do an above angle from above for next time, and I think I kind of know how I can do that. I'm happy with the picture quality, though. That's even though it's a different camera, so yeah, I look. I don't know. I'm about the same amount of pale in both. I'm happy with my backdrop, happy with my lighting for the most part. So, yeah. If you have any questions about the rail or its newer or its older versions, yeah, hit me up. And like I said, I'm going to have a video coming out on this particular one. And sort of the CZR, right? I'm not just going to get a CZR to review it, but the CZR Plus looks pretty good, so I'm going to talk about in the review of this how it has, like I said, the upgraded solenoid, the better eye pipe. The one that's in this one is okay. The biggest problem that eye pipes like this one have is user error, where they over tighten the barrel, so make sure you put an O-ring on your barrel. Feed neck is okay. No on-off ASA. Like, this is just a plug your tank in and that's it. I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all, actually, because as somebody's going to be lending these things out a lot, I don't want extra things for people to screw around with. I don't like that the reg is less serviceable, but then again, I'm a big fan of the axe that has like an unserviceable reg unless you go and get a bunch of patience and a special part, or a special tool to take it apart. Or I think in the old ones you used to have to like go and get a screwdriver and take an angle grinder to like cut a channel in it to, it's a big pain in the butt. But yeah, as far as I know, that should be working. These do have a really nice board in them. They're not super programmable compared to I've got a Virtue board in my PM8 because its board at the time didn't have PSP3 shot, I think was what I was missing. My new one, or my Virtue board rather, I can program like everything to match exactly the NXL standards. And that's what my local tournament scene is going to be using. So that's what I'm setting up. Yeah, trigger on these is terrible. It's fine for ramp, but the problem is it's got this like really gushy pre-travel and then a perfectly fine post-travel. But I have the backstop as far as it will go, and there's no pre-travel adjustment. If I could set it where it stopped there, I'd probably really enjoy this. Versus this is its bigger brother here. This is the reflex rail. You can see this trigger, highly adjustable. We've got pre-post, I think pre-post activation point spring tension versus I believe activation point stop, like activation point post travel. And I might mess around with it and see if I can make the pre-travel less, and then, or no, because again I have the stop as late as it goes. So if I extend the activation point, it's going to trigger and then go really far back, and that has a habit of ruining micro switches. And I don't want to do that because again, this has a really nice board in it, just a mediocre trigger. But for semi-auto, it's not bad. I had the Proto rail. No, not Proto rail. This is the Proto rail. The Proto Matrix, the PM8 that I've got tucked behind me somewhere. This guy down. That has that had this trigger but set up properly, where it had the conical adjustments here where you could actually go through the grip, which this makes me laugh. They kept the exact same mold, so it has the two dots. So I was really excited when I saw that, but that just leads to the plastic. I will say the trigger frame on this is as comfortable as ever, and you're very like this is so much more comfortable than a PMR. If anybody has used one of those, again, I've got one of those behind me somewhere that it had rubber that wrapped up back here, and it always felt real cheap in the hands. This doesn't somehow. And it is very, very light. That is, again, one of the things I'm looking forward to when it comes to lending this out. These have always and will always be a hog on gas. I did see a post recently. Somebody was asking, can I add a QEV to an old rail, and will that improve the shot quality? Yes, but no. It'll make it harder on paint because your bolt's going to move faster. Your gun can already shoot 20 BPS stock. So harder on paint, double the legal limit when it comes to speed. But some people do like, and it's one of the reasons I do like the reflex rail is it is faster, so it isn't as easy on the paint, but it does have a faster response. That's something I really like about the XTS, right? That responds really quickly. So, yeah. So trigger on these is meh. Trigger frame feels great. Front grip on it, it actually I really like what they did here. This thinning out here. So if you hold it low, you've got your rubber grip here. But if you hold it high around your barrel, it slims out like crazy. Like I think a bit slimmer than my PM8. Yeah, but definitely thinner than my rail. Because up top here on the rail, they put those contact pads and stuff. But yeah, it is very, very comfortable. And like I said, really, really light. And I don't know where they're getting some of that weight savings from. Because... This was one of its main competitors when these both came out. They're roughly the same size, front and back. The rail is a little shorter. You can see the regs compared there. How if I flip these around, you'll see that better. If I have my thumb on the back here, you can see roughly the same heights. Rail ends up being slightly taller, but the feed necks end up at the same height. Man, this is not working as well, but I don't want to put it in my main camera because then I might get some issues with YouTube. But I'll figure it out for next time. And then, yeah, the reg at the front is like a few millimeters forward. It's hard to tell from this angle. But, yeah, the weight comparison between an original ETHA and the rail... yeah, it's not as much as it felt yesterday. I wonder if one of my... Yeah, the rail, though, they've slimmed off so much weight on it. It's actually really impressive. Ooh, as I click my mouse with one of my guns here. All right. So anyway, that's like I said, mostly today wanted to just have a drink while I fix up this rail and make sure that all of my cameras and stuff would run. I could declare that a success. So if this rambly mess gets any views, cool. But if not, that's not really its point. But yeah, stay tuned. I'm going to be doing another one of these for this ETHA because I got these, like I said, I got 2 of them for real cheap. And I'm looking forward to fixing those up as loaners as well because, as I mentioned before, I want to get a bunch of people out this year. And this is how I'm going to do that. Is have some loaners because I have a collection going behind me. But some of those, right, like I'm not handing a Gen E Matrix to a buddy who's never gone paintballing before. That's a problem waiting to happen. As well as I've been inviting out, my nephews, my wife's friends, that kind of thing, where, lighter, more compact setups are the answer, especially because I cannot afford a whole bunch of super light, like featherweight tanks and stuff. I've got my carbon fiber tank and one spare. But in Canada, it's lovely. You don't have to hydro test if you're using a 48 3000. So they basically have like 25 years and you're good. It depends who you ask. Some people say infinite life as long as it keep. I don't know about that. Sorry, because I need to double check the Transport Canada codes on them. That'll actually give me the answer because that's the whole point of having those. But I've got a whole bunch of steel tanks. So lighter guns are a necessity when you're dealing with steel tanks. I love that Jenny Matrix behind me, but nephew thankfully is older than that, so that's all fine and dandy. But I also wanted guns that if like they get trounced apart a bit, I'm not too worried. I wanted, you know, if I hand you this and we hop on the speedball field, you're keeping up with everybody. It's great. And like I said, I got that rail for $80 Canadian, and then I did order a reg seal for it, which is nice, along with all my parts to make these ethos work, because yeah, that's not even coming out. Whoever had these ethos before me, I did meet the guy, and like he said, one of them works, the other one's for parts. Neither of them worked. But is this the one that's really hooped, or is this the one that I semi-fixed? I'll know if it pops out. Yeah, this is the one I semi-fixed. So, one, you could probably tell, no bolt tip. That's a problem. And then I put an O-ring in here just so that it would sit properly, but it didn't have the bumper here. I don't know if an O-ring like this would do. It might, but I have the bumpers are only like $2, so I ordered 4 of them. So I'll put one in each gun, and then I'll have those fixed. Thankfully, the spring for the poppet seems good to go. Yeah, I've heard mixed things about the OG Ethas, but I think it's actually a really cool design. And yeah, these are unfortunately not the springless poppet. I might see if I can track those down. But they're sold out across Canada, and Planet Eclipse has rules around shipping outside of your country. So, but yeah, I'm a big fan. This bolt system, it gets crapped on a lot, but yeah, these are actually very clever. I see, as soon as I pull this thing out, I see where the Ether 2 got its design. I know a lot of people like to think, oh, it's completely redesigned, but kind of. It's they're using like a spool and an air spring instead of the poppet and a mechanical spring, metal spring. So there's that. But anyway, I'm rambling now, and I want to have the rest of this beverage that I've been talking too much to enjoy. But hopefully, I will be hitting the field soon to test out a few of these. And yeah, stay tuned for more of these. That will be less of a rambly mess now that I, 1, know that everything works, and 2, know that this camera angle is not ideal. Right? So this is my phone on a mount. So I'm thinking it's not liking this. Fun facts about video compression. Video compression, if something is stationary, it will keep it stationary and not change those pixels. So because I'm moving this so much, it's like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? Okay, so I'd want it above, but I wonder. Now I'm just checking stuff because I can. If I drop this flat down and add it. No, then just everybody's looking at my crotch. But up like that, that is still in some regards still better for if I was showing small components. Yeah, I will figure this out for next time. In the meantime, I've got it at my disposal at this angle. so I can at least show internals and stuff. Because I got my rotor review. I don't know if I'll bother with it tonight, but I might do that on Sunday. Yeah. But, yeah.